I'll never forget the way they all looked at me, like I was the problem, like I was some kind of burden they were finally free of. It was almost exactly a year ago when I stood in that same doorway, holding my 5-year-old son in my arms, eyes puffy from crying all night. My marriage had just fallen apart. My husband, Tyler, had walked out, and his mother, Evelyn, was celebrating it. Yes, celebrating. There were champagne glasses clinking, music playing, and a giant pink banner above the fireplace that said in glittery cursive, "Congrats on losing dead weight." Dead weight. That's what they called me. I remember my son, Luca, asking me, "Mommy, why is Grandma having a party?" I just smiled and told him it was someone else's birthday. But it wasn't. It was our ending. Mine and Tyler's. And they turned it into a punchline. When I stepped into the living room, every head turned. They all fell silent for a split second. When Evelyn, my mother-in-law, tilted her wine glass toward me and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Smile, Jessa, you're free now." And they cheered, laughed like I wasn't even human. Like I hadn't just spent 7 years trying to build a life with their son. Like I hadn't just lost everything. That moment? It broke something in me. Not just the heartbreak. I was already drowning in that, but something else. The realization that I had been disposable to these people from the start. That no matter how hard I tried to fit in, I was never going to be one of them. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Not until I got back to my mom's house, and Luca was asleep. I just picked up my son, looked Evelyn in the eyes, and said, "We won't be back." And for a long time, we weren't. I spent the next year rebuilding everything they tried to burn down. My home, my confidence, my peace. They thought they'd broken me. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom. It gives you something solid to push off of. So when I found myself standing in that doorway again, 1 year later to the day, it wasn't by accident. I wasn't crying. I wasn't alone. I wasn't the same woman they had mocked and discarded. This time, I had Luca on one side and a lawyer on the other. The looks on their faces? Let's just say they weren't cheering anymore. Before the party, before the humiliation, before the betrayal. There was silence. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind. The kind of silence that hangs between two people who once loved each other but can't even make eye contact anymore. That's how the last 6 months of my marriage felt. Like I was living next to a stranger in my own home. Tyler and I met when I was 24. He was charming, successful, and confident in that polished, effortless way. He said all the right things, smiled at all the right times. Evelyn, his mother, said he was a catch. Everyone agreed, but no one ever warned me what it felt like to slowly disappear inside a relationship. At first, things were perfect. We bought a modest home just outside of Denver. Tyler worked in finance, and I stayed home with Luca, who was born 2 years into our marriage. I loved being a mom. I loved our little family, or at least, I loved what I thought we were. But the cracks started showing slowly. Like hairline fractures you don't notice until the whole thing shatters. Tyler started working late, coming home after Luca was already in bed. Always on his phone, always tired. He stopped asking me about my day. He stopped caring when I cried. When I brought up how distant things had gotten, he'd sigh and say I was overthinking again. "You're too emotional, Jessa. Can't you just be happy?" Happy? I was exhausted, lonely. I felt like a ghost moving through the house, cooking dinner for someone who didn't even look up from his phone. And then there was Evelyn. My mother-in-law had never really liked me. She didn't have to say it out loud. It was in every sideways glance, every backhanded comment, every little moment where she reminded me I wasn't part of their picture-perfect legacy. When Luca was born, she showed up uninvited and stayed a full week, criticizing how I changed his diaper, how I fed him, how I dressed him. She told me once, while Tyler was out of the room, "You don't really fit this family, do you?" I laughed it off. I always did. I thought if I was just nicer, more helpful, more patient, maybe she'd come around. Maybe they all would, but I was wrong. The truth was, I spent 7 years trying to earn love from people who only saw me as temporary. By the end of year 6, Tyler and I were barely speaking. He'd sleep in the guest room after claiming he had to be up early. He forgot anniversaries. He started traveling more. Once I found a receipt from a jewelry store in his coat pocket, but I never got a gift. I remember asking him one night, "Is there someone else?" He didn't deny it. He didn't confirm it either. He just looked at me with that same tired expression and said, "We're not working anymore, Jessa. I don't want to pretend." A week later, he moved out. No fight, no yelling. Just a quiet exit with 2 suitcases and a text to his mom that I later saw on his phone. She didn't even cry, just stood there like a zombie. But I did cry. That night, in the shower, with the water running just loud enough to drown out the sound, I cried for our marriage, for the little girl inside me who thought love meant holding on no matter what, for Luca, who didn't understand why Daddy wasn't home anymore. I moved in with my mom, Margot, 2 days later. She cleared out her guest room and helped me enroll Luca in preschool near her place. My mom has always been my safe place. She raised me alone after my dad left when I was 10. She knew heartbreak, she knew survival, and when I couldn't speak, she held me and said, "You won't feel like this forever. Promise." And I clung to that. I wish I could say Tyler was civil afterward, that he showed up for Luca, but he didn't. He missed visits, blamed work, and Evelyn? She took his side completely. She told everyone I gave up on the marriage, that I was emotionally unstable, that Tyler had escaped. I didn't know it at the time, but she was planning a party, a divorce party. And when I walked into that living room to pick up my son the following month and saw them all laughing under that pink glitter banner, I realized they weren't just celebrating the end of my marriage, they were celebrating the end of me, or so they thought. I wish I could tell you the worst part of my divorce was the day Tyler left. It wasn't. It was what came after. It was finding out that while I was piecing together a new life for Luca and me, still numb from the shock, they were celebrating. A few weeks after Tyler moved out, I got a call from a friend of his cousin, someone I barely knew but who'd always been kind. Her voice was quiet, cautious. "Jessa, I'm not sure if you know, but Evelyn threw a party, a divorce party, last night." At first, I thought I misheard her. I asked her to repeat it. There was a cake, champagne. Tyler was there with a new woman. The cake said, "Congrats on losing dead weight." "I'm sorry. I just thought you should know." I don't remember what I said back. I think I hung up without even thanking her. I sat on my mom's porch, phone in hand, fingers shaking. My stomach turned to ice. My ears rang. It wasn't just betrayal. It was mockery. I had just spent the last month trying to survive. Sleepless nights, uncontrollable crying, trying to help my son understand why Daddy didn't come home anymore. And Evelyn, the woman who had once held Luca in the hospital and called him a miracle, was now toasting to our downfall. The next weekend was Tyler's turn with Luca. I almost didn't send him, but legally I didn't have a choice, so I drove him to Evelyn's house. I told myself I'd just drop him off at the door. I told myself I wouldn't go in, that I didn't need to see them, that I didn't need the reminder. But when I pulled into the driveway, Luca asked, "Can you walk me to the door, Mommy?" So I did. I stepped into the house I had visited 100 times before. The same tiled entryway, the same scent of floral air freshener and perfume. But it didn't feel like the same place anymore. And then I saw it. The remnants of the party. Balloons still taped to the dining room arch, empty champagne bottles on the sideboard, confetti stuck in the corners of the carpet. Tyler was sitting on the couch with a woman I'd never seen before, blonde, younger, perfect. Evelyn stood near the fireplace, holding a half-empty glass of red wine. She smiled like nothing was out of place. When she saw me, she raised her glass and said, "Smile, Jessa, you're free now." The room broke into scattered laughter. I think someone actually clapped. I didn't say a word. I picked up Luca's overnight bag, handed it to Evelyn, and crouched to hug my son. I kissed his forehead and told him to be good. He asked why everyone was laughing. I told him it was just a grown-up game. Then I stood up, turned around, and walked out of that house with my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear my own footsteps. I got back into my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat there, staring at the dashboard. I had never felt so disrespected, so discarded, so erased. And the thing that cut the deepest? They didn't just tolerate my pain. They celebrated it. That night, I cried harder than I ever had. My mom held me like she used to when I was little and had nightmares. "You're not dead weight," she whispered. "You're gold, and they'll choke on their own cruelty one day." I didn't believe her. Not then, but a seed had been planted. Something small, something angry, something determined. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to destroy Tyler or Evelyn. I just wanted my life back. And not the broken, tiptoeing, hold-it-together life I'd been living during that marriage. I wanted more. I wanted to build something so strong, so solid, so bright, that it would burn through every lie they told about me. That night, I opened my laptop and started making a list. Things I needed to fix, goals, boundaries, steps. And at the top of that list, never let them see you small again. The night after the party, something inside me cracked, but it didn't break, it shifted. I lay awake in my mom's guest room, staring at the ceiling while Luca slept beside me. My heart felt like it had been dragged across gravel, but my mind was alive in a way it hadn't been in months. I kept hearing Evelyn's voice echoing, "Smile, Jessa. You're free now." It was supposed to sting, and it did, but it also made me realize something. I was free. Not in the way she meant, not like Tyler had done me a favor by walking out, but free from pretending, free from shrinking myself to fit into their twisted definition of a perfect wife, free from asking for love where there was none left to give. I wasn't going to let their cruelty define me, and I wasn't going to let my son grow up watching his mother disappear under someone else's shadow. So I started small. The next morning, I made a list. Not just a get your life together checklist. I'd tried that before. This was different. This list was about reclaiming everything they tried to take from me. I titled it, Rebuild. Under that, I wrote 6 things. 1, get a job, a real one, with purpose, stability, and a future. 2, get therapy and do the work. 3, secure a new apartment by the end of the year. 4, rebuild my credit. 5, document everything with Tyler, every missed pickup, every ignored message, every late child support payment. 6, get full custody of Luca. I didn't tell anyone about the list at first, not even my mom. It was just mine, my own quiet declaration of war against the version of myself they wanted me to be. Within 2 weeks, I landed a remote content coordinator position with a wellness startup. It didn't pay much at first, but it was flexible, and it was mine. It felt like planting my first flag. Then I found a therapist, Rachel, a tough, no-nonsense woman in her 40s who didn't let me hide behind polite smiles. "You've been emotionally gaslit for years," she said during our first session. "You were trained to believe your feelings were too much. They're not. You were just surrounded by people who didn't want to deal with them." I cried. Then I thanked her. Therapy changed everything. It didn't make the pain go away, but it gave it shape, gave me words, tools. And when I felt like unraveling, I could finally see where the threads led. Luca, too, began to thrive. With the emotional chaos behind us, he laughed more, slept better. I signed him up for karate classes. We had Friday pancake nights. It wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful. And then something unexpected happened. I reconnected with Darren Brooks. Darren and I went to high school together. We hadn't spoken in years, but he'd reached out after seeing one of my job posts on LinkedIn. "Hey, Jessa, I saw your name and thought of you. Hope everything's good." We started chatting, then coffee, then lunch. Then it became regular, a slow burn, nothing forced. He listened, not just nodded, really listened. He was kind, steady, and smart, a family law attorney, ironically. He never pushed, never played games. And when I told him about everything, the party, the banner, the humiliation, he didn't offer empty comfort. He just said, "They underestimated the wrong woman." That line stuck with me. As months passed, Darren helped me quietly gather documentation. Missed child support payments, texts from Tyler canceling last-minute visits, the messages where Evelyn criticized my parenting. I didn't want to drag them through court, but I also wasn't going to let my son be raised around people who treated me like a joke. So we prepared. And then, on the 1-year anniversary of the divorce party, I asked Darren to come with me. Same house, same street, but this time everything was different. I dressed Luca in his best school uniform. I wore a soft navy blue blazer I bought just for this day. Clean, sharp, steady. Darren walked beside me, briefcase in hand, his expression calm but serious. I didn't knock. I just walked in. And when Evelyn looked up from her couch, glass of wine in hand, and saw me, her eyes narrowed. Tyler looked confused, then annoyed. I held the custody documents in my hand. "This is for you," I said. Darren added, "You have 30 days to respond." Silence. No champagne, no clapping, no banner. Just silence. I looked at Evelyn and said, "You told me to smile because I was free. You were right. I am. And now, so is my son." Then I turned and walked out. And this time, I was the one who got the last word. When I walked out of that house after delivering the custody papers, I didn't cry, I didn't shake, I didn't even look back. I'd done it. The same front door where I had once stood humiliated, holding my son while they toasted my misery, now stood behind me. And in front of me, my future. The next few weeks were a blur of legal motions, calls, and waiting. But this time I had control. I had proof, I had a case, and I had a voice that no longer trembled. Tyler didn't take the papers seriously at first. He messaged me 2 days later. "So now you're trying to keep my son from me?" Wow, real classy. But I didn't engage. I let the documents, and my silence, speak for me. He missed the first court deadline, then showed up to mediation late and unprepared. Darren sat beside me through it all, calm and firm. Evelyn didn't come. She didn't dare. The judge looked over our file. Months of missed child support, inconsistent visits, and texts that showed Tyler brushing off parental responsibility like it was a weekend hobby. I'd kept everything. Dates, screenshots, even receipts for Luca's medical appointments Tyler never attended. When the judge asked Tyler why he hadn't been more consistent, he shrugged and said, "I've been busy. Work's been demanding." No remorse, no accountability, just excuses. Meanwhile, I laid everything on the table. Not with tears, not with bitterness, but with clarity. "I'm not trying to keep Luca from his father," I told the judge. "I'm trying to protect my son from growing up thinking that emotional neglect is normal. I want him to have stability, that's all." It wasn't just what I said, it was how I stood. I wasn't the woman they once called dead weight. I was a mother, a provider, a survivor. And I knew what I was fighting for. 3 weeks later, the ruling came in. Full physical custody granted to me. Tyler would be given supervised visitation, contingent on his attendance at parenting sessions and completion of a financial support agreement. It wasn't revenge. It was protection. And it was justice. I cried that night, not because I was sad, but because for the first time in over a year, I felt safe. I felt like I could finally breathe without waiting for the next blow. Luca was coloring on the living room floor when I got the call. I hung up, sat down beside him, and said, "Guess what? Mommy did it. We're going to be okay." He looked at me, confused for a moment. Then he smiled and said, "You were already okay, Mommy." That night, I cooked us our favorite meal, cheesy pasta with garlic bread, and we danced in the kitchen to our silly playlist. Stronger by Kelly Clarkson came on, and Luca spun around in his little socks, laughing like the world had never tried to crush us. In a way, it hadn't. It had just revealed who we really were. A week later, I got a knock on the door. It was a package, no return address. Inside was a silver picture frame, empty, no note, just the frame. I knew immediately who it was from. Evelyn. It was a message, a petty one. I laughed. And then I filled the frame with a photo of Luca and me from his 6th birthday. Both of us grinning in front of the cake, his arms around my neck, balloons behind us, sunlight on our faces. I placed the frame on the mantle. It wasn't just a photo, it was proof. Proof that I didn't just survive. I rebuilt. And I didn't need a party. I didn't need a toast. I just needed to walk back into the same house where they once tried to break me, and leave standing taller than I ever had before. They had celebrated my pain. And now, quietly, confidently, I was celebrating my power. The night after I got full custody, I stood in my new apartment's kitchen, barefoot, drinking a cup of tea with the lights dimmed low. Luca was asleep in the next room. his cheeks pink from playing, the soft rise and fall of his breath, reminding me that no matter how messy life had been, I had done something right. I'd won. Not just in court. I had won back myself. It's strange, isn't it? How sometimes the people who hurt you the most think they're doing you a favor, as if their absence is a gift, as if their cruelty is character building. That night, Evelyn's words came back to me. You're free now. And you know what? She wasn't wrong. She just didn't know what I would do with that freedom. For the first time in years, I wasn't waking up in fear of what kind of mood someone else would be in. I wasn't shrinking at dinner tables or censoring myself so I wouldn't be called too sensitive. I wasn't apologizing for existing. I was showing up, fully, for myself and for my son. In the months that followed, things began to settle. Tyler faded into the background. He made a few attempts to challenge the custody arrangement, but each one was weak and half-hearted. It became clear he was more invested in the idea of control than actual parenting. Evelyn sent a few snide messages through mutual contacts, but I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I was done speaking in rooms where I had to beg to be heard. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. Darren and we took things slow. He respected my space. Never tried to swoop in and rescue me. He saw me as a whole person, not a project. And somewhere along the way, I realized I wasn't just learning to trust him. I was learning to trust myself again. We hosted Luca's 6th birthday party in the little community park near our apartment. My mom made cupcakes. Luca wore a paper crown. Darren grilled hot dogs. There was no glittery banner, no champagne, no cruel smiles pretending to be support, just laughter, real, pure, and earned. And as I stood there, watching Luca chase bubbles, my mom talking with other parents, Darren tying balloons to the picnic bench, I realized this is what healing looks like. It's not flashy, it's not loud, it's not Instagram perfect, it's quiet, it's consistent, it's yours. I thought a lot about the woman I used to be, the one who stood in that house, frozen and humiliated, with her son on her hip and a room full of people laughing at her heartbreak. If I could speak to her now, I'd tell her, you're going to get through this. They're not laughing because you're weak. They're laughing because they're afraid of what you'll become when you stop begging for crumbs. Because that's what happened. I stopped asking for space in other people's lives and built a life of my own. And here's the thing I've learned. Sometimes the people who betray you the deepest are the ones who teach you the most. Not about love, but about boundaries, about self-worth, about the kind of peace that doesn't come from anyone else's approval. They thought they were ending my story, but they were just clearing the page, and I've written every word since. So to anyone out there who's ever felt erased, overlooked, laughed at, or tossed aside, I see you. I was you. And I promise you this, there is life after betrayal. There is strength after humiliation. And sometimes the most powerful thing you'll ever do is walk away quietly and let your life do the talking. Soft music fading in, tone warm, grounded, and reflective. That's my story. It wasn't the ending I expected, but it became the beginning I needed. If this resonated with you, if you've ever had to rebuild yourself after being torn down, just know you're not alone, and you're not broken. You're becoming. If you made it this far, thank you for listening, for feeling this with me. And if you felt anything, anger, hope, maybe even a little fire in your chest, please do me a favor. Like the video, share it with someone who might need to hear this. Leave a comment, tell me your story, or just drop a "I made it out too." And subscribe to the channel if you want more real stories, real healing, and real strength. Until next time, take care of yourself. You matter more than they ever let you believe.